All right, you guys. So, again, I am filming. My students know that, just so you guys are all aware. I'm going to go through this really quickly. I'm going to go through the instructions for class number 36, and then I'll go through the lecture, which is the first page of the Google Doc, and then I'll give you guys instructions for the rest of the day, and then I will stop filming just to let you guys, fifth period, just so you're aware. Okay, let's go ahead and go through this. Class number 36, Imperialism Concept Day. I'm going to take you through this lesson kind of as an overview. It is a 6-point assignment, so it's an important one that you guys, it's really important that you get the big concept today. This is going to be the last topic that we're going to be studying before we take our winter break, okay? So we'll start with the concept today, and then we'll dig in on more detail as we get into the rest of our classes. Bullet point 1, first we will work as a class together to be introduced to the concept with a short lecture. And that's what I'm going to be filming so that my students that don't have me can fill in the blanks with, okay? That's going to be the purple section of the Google Doc. That's the first page of the Google Doc that you guys have a copy of. After the lecture, you're going to read and respond to some simple questions about the era of new imperialism. And I'll show you guys that on the screen here in just a few moments. And then for task number 3 today, you're either going to do choice A or choice B, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail as we get there, okay? So if you don't have it open yet, make sure you open up your copy of the Google Doc. Once you do, it's going to look like this. Can I get some thumbs up? Making sure you guys are with me. Cool. All right. I'm going to just walk through it, guys, because I don't want the video to have to be too long, okay? I'm not going to be typing, but as I walk through these notes, you'll see where the blanks are. You guys are either going to type in the blanks or the purple boxes. It doesn't matter to me where you put your answers. It just whatever's easier for you guys, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get into this concept. Imperialism. One of the most important concepts to understand for world history is the idea of imperialism. Complete the following notes in order to gain a beginning understanding of the importance of this concept to world history. Again, this is a world history concept, but it's really important to understand the concept so that you can be ready for when we look at U.S. imperialism. Okay? Next paragraph. Fill in the purple boxes to complete the sentences. The boxes match with the blanks in each sentence. Your teacher will lecture through this material, providing you with the correct information. Again, if you want to fill in the blanks, you can fill in the blanks. I just have the boxes there as a second option as well. Okay? Bullet point number 1, right here, guys. Imperialism is one of the biggest, blank number 1, biggest and most important concepts of world history. Imperialism is one of the biggest and most important concepts of world history. Next sentence. The main idea is that the strong and powerful nations of the world would take over and dominate the other nations. So the main idea is that the strong and powerful nations of the world would take over and dominate the other nations. Okay? So I'm going to go through those two sentences again. Imperialism is one of the biggest and most important concepts of world history. The main idea is that the strong and powerful nations of the world would take over and dominate the other nations. You should have those first 4 done. Next sentence. Usually in imperialism, especially with the era known as New Imperialism, the dominant nations were European, and they took over and dominated nations in Asia and Africa. So New Imperialism, they were European, and they took over and dominated nations in Asia and Africa. Okay? So that's the big idea of imperialism. Powerful nations dominating weaker nations. And usually it's based on military strength, right? You go into Asia, they've got spears. Go into Africa, they got spears and swords, right? You come in with machine guns, who's going to win that battle, right? So understand that's a big part of this new imperialism era. All right, bullet point number 2, guys. Imperialism has been taking place for hundreds of years. First in the form of colonialism in the American continents and Asia between approximately 1450 to 1650. You should be typing those answers in. Imperialism has been taking place for hundreds of years. First in the form of colonialism in the American continents and Asia between approximately 1450 to 1650. This period is known as the, blank number 3, Old Imperialism Era. So it's been taking place for hundreds of years, guys. Actually, we could even go back thousands of years, right? Anytime you've got war going on, where one country is going in and trying to take over another country, that is imperialism. But specifically, once Columbus gets here, once Columbus, quote unquote, discovers America, that's when the Spanish start coming over. That's when the French start coming over. That's when the English start coming over. And when I say coming over, they're coming from the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere, right? That's the old imperialism era. Now, it was different then than it was with what we're going to be talking about today. The old imperialism era meant that the people that were there were wiped out. Guys, there is a reason why Navajo is not a very strong language in this place any longer. There is a reason why we don't speak Aztec language, right? Or a Mayan language. What are the 3 main languages here in this part of the country or part of the world? French up in Canada, English here in America, and Spanish in Central and South America, because those were the 3 dominant nations. There were other nations that came too. Portugal came, okay? Germany came. But the most powerful nations were the French, and they settled up in Canada, the English, and they took over the 13 colonies. We know the lesson, right? And then the Spanish, and the Spanish took over all of South America and most of Central America as well. That's the old imperialism era. The Native Americans were wiped out from Canada through America, Central and South America. The Native American people were gone. That's the old imperialism lesson, okay? The new imperialism era. Now, this is the 3rd bullet point, and this is what we're going to be focused on today. The new imperialism era began in the mid-1800s. So blank number 1, the new imperialism era began in the mid-1800s. You should be typing these answers in, kids. The new imperialism era began in the mid-1800s. Specifically, this form of imperialism was characterized by the specific practice of economically exploiting weaker nations for their, 2 words, natural resources. So I'm going to go through that again. Make sure you're filling in these blanks. The new imperialism era began in the mid-1800s. Specifically, this form of imperialism was characterized by the specific practice of economically exploiting weaker nations for their natural resources. And to exploit means to take advantage of without concern. Guys, when we're talking about taking over natural resources, we're talking about things like lumber. We're talking about things like coal, oil, gold, diamonds, rubber plants, rubber trees. Why? Because rubber is used to make tires, right? Understand, when we're talking about natural resources, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. So new imperialism, when these European countries would go into these countries in Asia and Africa, they wouldn't take over completely. They wouldn't take over politically. They wouldn't take ownership of the land. They would just strip the natural resources out of the land. That's why they still speak native languages in the African continent. That's why they still speak native languages in the Asian continent, right? Now, they speak some European languages as well, but the original inhabitants of those lands were not wiped out. They were not decimated. They were just exploited for their natural resources. Now, just exploited makes it sound, no, it was horrible. Okay? The new imperialism era began in the mid-1800s. Specifically, this form of imperialism was characterized by the specific practice of economically exploiting weaker nations for their natural resources. Next bullet point. The raw materials, natural resources would then be used in the, number one, factories of the industrial age. Factories. So we're on bullet point 4. You should be keeping up with me. The raw materials, natural resources would then be used in the factories of the industrial age. The finished goods would then be sold back to the colonized nations. Sold back to the colonized nations. In this way, the imperialist powers destroyed not only the natural environment by taking all raw materials from the land, but they also destroyed economic opportunities for the people living in the dominated nations. Guys, Africa is still not recovered from this exploitation. Asia has still not recovered from this economic exploitation because the raw materials were stripped from their land. What do you need to have industry? You need raw materials. The reason why America is so powerful is because we have raw materials. We've got lumber, we've got oil, we've got coal, we've got iron ore, which is used to make steel. European nations didn't have those things. So the European nations went in, took over in Africa and Asia, and took those natural resources away. That's why Asia has never been able to completely develop economically. That's why Africa has never really been able to develop economically. Does that make sense? You got to understand that because we are still dealing with the results of that. Next and last bullet point. Imperialism was even worse than this economic devastation. However, imperialism also destroyed the dominated nations, number one, culture, and number two, social structure. Culture and social structure. All right, so for those of you watching this on video, those are my notes. You can quickly look through them. I expect that all of those blanks will be filled in. Now let me give you guys the rest of the instructions for the rest of the assignment, and then I'll stop recording and you guys will be working on your own for the rest of the day. Okay? So you should have all of these blanks filled in. That gives you an overview of the concept. Now, the next thing I'm going to have you do, and I'm going to have you do it all in just a few moments, but for right now, let me give you instructions. Find, cut, and paste political cartoons that you feel explain the concept of imperialism as you understand it so far. Replace the images below. Right-click on the image, replace it, type imperialism political cartoon. So I'm expecting 2 political cartoons for imperialism. It's easy stuff, okay? Once you are done with that, everybody's attention should be up here with me on the screen. The new imperialism read and response. Guys, there's 8 questions. Okay? There are some of them that you need to type answers for. And then there is a fill-in or is a multiple choice one. There's a multiple choice one here. Another place where you fill in or you find a different picture. And then there is a true false one here. So all of that needs to be done by using the new imperialism reading PDF. Open that in a new tab and you'll see it's not very long, guys. It's only 2 pages of reading. And in that 2 pages, you're going to find everything you need to answer these questions. Okay? So again, you should have the notes done already. Then you complete the pictures, and then you open up the PDF and answer all of these questions. Lastly, you're going to have 2 choices. Choice A or choice B. For choice A, you're going to create a 5 motives for imperialism Google slideshow. That is one of your choices. I'm not going to go through the instructions. You follow the instructions here. That's choice A. Choice B, you can watch the Crash Course World History Imperialism video and answer these questions. Again, I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to let you guys decide which one to do. If you do choice A, the slideshow, you'll find a template attached to the Google Classroom. So I think I'm done. For those of you watching the video, make sure you do the lecture, make sure you do the pictures, you answer the questions using the PDF. That is required of everyone. And then again, you do choice A or choice B. The Google slideshow on the 5 motives, or choice B, watch the imperialism crash course and answer the questions. Okay, those of you who are on video, that's it. 15 minutes, you should be fine. We'll see you next class.